Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Another Woman's Treasure by J.B. Lynn, narrated by Coleen Marlo. 1. "Are you spying on him?" Startled, Amanda Concordia jumped back, bouncing against the wall behind her. She gave Rupert, the ghost in the seersucker suit watching her, a dirty look. "No, I'm not spying on him." Rupert raised his ghostly eyebrows, signaling his disbelief. Amanda's gaze drifted back to the man she was accused of spying on. Detective Tom Keller, in yet another gray dress shirt, was deep in conversation with Piper, the owner of the Perk Up coffee shop. She looked upset. He looked unhappy. Maybe there was trouble in paradise. A tiny part of her, she was slightly ashamed to admit, wanted to do a jig. "They look like they're deep in conversation, and I didn't want to interrupt," she told Rupert. "And yet you've been standing here for the last 5 minutes staring at him," he teased. Amanda shrugged, not needing to justify herself to a ghost. She couldn't even explain what she was doing to herself. Not for the first time, she wondered how Detective Keller, a man who seemed to wear his sense of responsibility like a Medal of Honor, could be attracted to Piper, who, although a nice person, insisted on wearing her hair in pigtails even though she was a grown adult. As though he realized who was being talked about, the detective looked up and caught Amanda's eye. He offered her a curt nod. Piper, following his line of sight, gave Amanda a huge smile and an enthusiastic wave. Feeling like she'd got caught spying, because she had, Amanda waved back weakly, trying to lift the corners of her mouth into the semblance of a smile. She ducked back into the one-woman's junk consignment shop and took a deep breath, the familiar scent of orange and cinnamon comforting her. Nutmeg, the rescue dog she and her sisters had adopted, gave her a single bark. Amanda didn't know whether that meant the dog was hungry, wanted to go for a walk, or was just asking her if she was okay. She decided to go with the third option. "I'm fine," she muttered. "I'm just fine." "She doth protest too much," Rupert said, having taken up his usual spot leaning against the bookshelf. Amanda considered taking off the rose quartz earrings she'd inherited from her godmother, Letty, considering they seemed to be the reason she was able to see and hear the ghost. There were times when she really didn't want to listen to him. She glanced around the store and was surprised to see that neither of her sisters were there. "Where are Bee and Winnie?" she asked Nutmeg. The dog quickly raced up the stairs to the apartment above the shop and then back down. Winnie was probably drawing at Letty's desk upstairs. Her brows drew together in concern. Their mother had been extremely obsessive with her hobby of needlepoint just before her death. Her sisters had been too young to remember that, but Amanda recalled all too well the impulsive stitching. Feeling as helpless to assist Winnie as she had their mother, Amanda turned her thoughts to their youngest sister. No doubt Bee was spending time with Ash Costin, the carpenter in the nearby shop, who she was now staying with. He seemed to be a stabling influence on her wilder sister, and she was glad they'd found happiness together. With a sigh, Amanda crossed her arms over her chest and surveyed the contents of one woman's junk. Like her life, everything was just a little bit off. Not quite organized, not in the best of shape. Still, like her life, it worked. She'd come to Sarasota when Letty had passed away. She'd stayed, mostly because she had nowhere else to go, and she really wanted a chance to bond with her sisters. For the first time in their lives, the age differences between them didn't seem to matter as much, and she was able to connect with them as real people. Since Winnie was only 5 years younger than her, they'd had an okay relationship over the years, but their younger sister, Bee, had been harder for Amanda to connect with. 10 years seemed like a generation. She was pleased that they were working together to run the shop. "The investigator lad is here," Angus, the Loch Ness Monster statue who held the front door of the shop, warned in his thick Scottish brogue, jolting her out of her musings. Amanda grinned, suddenly excited, for just a moment, before she remembered he was taken. Feeling guilty for wanting another woman's man, she scowled. "You want his help," Rupert reminded her, appearing by the front door. "No need to be such a sourpuss." Realizing the ghost was right, she did her best to adopt a neutral expression as Detective Tom Keller strolled into the shop. Nutmeg barked an excited greeting at him. Amanda forced herself to smile. "Good morning, Detective." He shook his head. "Don't we know each other well enough now that you can call me Tom?" He offered her a steaming hot cup of coffee from Perk Up. As she took it, their fingers brushed against each other. A spark of electricity flowed between them, igniting physical sensations in Amanda that she thought were a thing of the past. Flustered, she moved away, wondering if he'd felt it too. "I wanted to give you a bit of an update," Keller said when she didn't respond to his request to call him by his first name. Needing Nutmeg's steadying presence, Amanda put the coffee down on the counter and scooped the dog up into her arms. She hugged him close, bracing herself for whatever the detective was going to reveal about her godmother's murder. "We searched Richardson's house," he said. Amanda nodded. Richardson, the local fire inspector, had confessed to her and her sisters, when he'd been about to burn them to death, that he'd been the one to kill Letty. "But we still don't know who his employer is." Amanda winced. "Can you not call him or her an employer?" she asked. "Whoever they are, they're a soulless fiend that stole the woman who raised us." Keller nodded sympathetically. "I'm sorry." Sensing his apology was genuine, Amanda offered him a real smile in response. "Please don't think we don't appreciate everything that you've done," she said. Tom Keller had been the one to find the murder weapon, and he was the one building a case against Letty's killer. If it hadn't been for the detective, doggedly working a case that he'd never been assigned to, they would have never known for sure that Letty had been murdered. They owed him so much. She owed him so much. She just wished there was something she could do to help his investigation. She and her sisters had been trying to figure out the clues their powers were giving them, but so far, they only had more questions than answers. "If we could figure out who she had upset," Keller began slowly. "There's a journal," Amanda blurted out. She glanced upward, wondering if Winnie could hear her. She and her sisters had been keeping it a secret from him. "It didn't belong to her," Amanda explained, "but it did belong to a woman who seemed to be in an abusive relationship. If Letty was trying to help her escape." Tom nodded and glanced at his watch. "I'd love to see it," he said, "but I've got to get to court. I'm testifying in another case today." Amanda nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "What if I bring over a pizza when I'm done with work for the day, and we can go over it?" he suggested. "You want to have dinner?" she squeaked like a nervous teenager, wondering what Piper would think of that. "Dinner won't kill anyone," he said with a teasing smile. "In this town, I wouldn't be so sure of that," Amanda quipped. "But come over," she said. "I'll make sure that my sisters are here and that we have the journal available for you." He blinked. Yeah, sure." She told herself that she was imagining that he looked slightly confused, maybe even disappointed. But then he recovered, raising his coffee cup in a half-hearted toast. "I'll see you later, Amanda." Her heart skipped, thrilled at the sound of her name on his lips. She nodded dumbly, unable to speak. He tilted his head, a knowing smile spreading across his features before he turned to leave. When he was gone from the store, Amanda put Nutmeg on the ground, no longer needing to use him as a shield. "Thanks for the coffee, Tom," Rupert mocked. "Shut up," she retorted. "A man would have to be a pretty bad detective to not see how attracted to him you are," the ghost pointed out, laughing. 2. Winnie bounded down from the upstairs apartment, waving a piece of paper. "I'm drawing us a treasure map." Amanda frowned. "A treasure map?" Winnie nodded enthusiastically. While she'd always been an artist, she'd put it aside for many years. At least, until she'd received her powers. Now she seemed to be drawing things she'd never seen before. She held it out to Amanda with a wide grin. "See? It's a treasure map." "And why are we looking for treasure?" Winnie shook her head and climbed onto the stool behind the cash register. "Think about it," she said. "Bea has been seeing a pirate flag practically since she got here, and then she saw Letty burying a box. Now I'm drawing a map, so it has to be a treasure map." Amanda nodded slowly, grudgingly following the logic. Bea strolled into the shop, throwing over her shoulder to Angus, "And good morning to you, too." Amanda noted that despite still using crutches, she was moving much easier and steadier now, and that the physical therapy was obviously working. She was glad to see her younger sister back on her feet.
"You didn't say good morning to me,"
Pim, the toy black sheep, complained from where he was perched on a bookshelf. "Good morning, Pim," she replied easily. "What's everyone up to this morning?" "I'm drawing a treasure map," Winnie informed her. Bee reacted in the exact opposite way than Amanda had. "That's great. Let me see it." The two of them pored over the drawing that Winnie had made. Meanwhile, Amanda straightened up some items around the shop. "It's weird that she buried it under trees," Bee murmured. Amanda glanced over, and despite her best intentions, found herself going to look over her sister's shoulders so she could see the map. There was definitely an X marking the spot, beneath some sort of large tree covered with Spanish moss. Knowing how much their godmother had feared trees, it didn't make much sense that that was where she had chosen to bury her treasure. Then again, it didn't make sense to hide something on a beach where there were no landmarks, like pirates did. Amanda let out a shaky sigh. At least if her sisters insisted on going to look for the treasure, they wouldn't be by the water's edge. As much as Letty hated trees, Amanda was terrified of water. She'd been 10 when their parents had drowned, and she could still remember the screams, the splashing, the sense of utter helplessness, as her mother and father had been dragged below the surface. She'd been told to stay on the beach and watch her sisters, and that's what she had done. Not that as a child she would have been able to save them, but that feeling of standing on sand, feeling your entire world shift beneath you, was something that still haunted Amanda's nightmares. She obviously wasn't the only one with nightmares, as Bee announced, "Hank's coming to take the locks off all the doors." Amanda caught Winnie's eye over Bee's head, and slowly mouthed, "Let her." Bee had been jumpy about locks ever since Richardson had locked them in a storeroom as he prepared to burn the shop, with them in it, to the ground. "I don't understand why Letty had everything locked up here," Bee complained. "At home she never even locked the front door. Here everything is hidden and locked away." "It is a business," Winnie said gently. Amanda knew that they were both avoiding discussing why Bee wanted the locks taken off the door. Bee, who'd never liked being constrained in any aspect of her life, had reacted the worst to being locked up. Rena, the homeless girl she'd taken under her wing and who shared a bedroom with Bee at Ash's place, had confided she had nightmares. "Jim and I think that it's Peter Perkins who put Richardson up to everything," Winnie said, steering the conversation away from the locks on the doors. Amanda nodded. The same thought had occurred to her. "He does seem to have the most to gain." Bee frowned. "I don't understand why Richardson just doesn't tell the police why he did it. Who hired him?" Amanda wrapped her arms around her younger sister and gave a squeeze. She understood the sense of helplessness she felt. It seemed so unfair that Letty's life had been snuffed out, and they didn't even understand why. "Detective Keller is doing his best." Winnie began to fold up her map. "So, you've decided to stop alienating him?" Amanda shook her head. "I wasn't alienating him," she said. She watched as Bee and Winnie shared a look. "You like him," Bee said. Amanda shook her head even as her cheeks began to warm. "No, I don't." "Yes, you do," Rupert interjected from across the room, where he stood in front of the bookshelf. Amanda's gaze rocketed over to Rupert, but she didn't respond to him. "He seems like a nice guy," Winnie suggested. "He seems like somebody who's already involved with someone," Amanda retorted sharply. "Besides, we have a very professional relationship with him. We're going to show him the journal tonight." Bee's eyebrows shot up. "We are?" "Not me," Winnie said, stuffing the folded map into the back of her jeans pocket. "I have a date with Jim. We're going to go on a sunset cruise." Amanda shuddered at the thought of spending an entire evening on the water. "And Ash and I already have plans," Bee said. "You'll have to deal with the detective on your own," Winnie told Amanda. Before she could open her mouth to protest, Harmony breezed into the shop, effectively ending the conversation. She wasn't looking forward to dealing with the detective on her own, especially if she behaved like a lovesick, tongue-tied teenager again. Rupert would never let her live that down. But if she wanted to solve who wanted Letty dead, she was willing to do it. 3. A cloud of tie-dye and gauze, enveloped in a cloud of patchouli, bustled into the store. Happy to see Harmony, Letty's friend and a fellow shop owner, Bee smiled. "Good morning, Harmony." "Blessings," the older woman replied. "How are you feeling?" Bea asked. Harmony had gotten caught up in the fire at the dry cleaners, owned by Bruce Gold, at the end of the strip mall. Strangely, Richardson hadn't taken responsibility for her assault. "Fit as a fiddle," Harmony replied. "I came to check on how you girls were doing." "We're doing well," Winnie said, while surreptitiously moving as far away as possible from the odor Harmony effused. Bea bit back a smile, watching as Amanda, doing her best to be polite, fought not to wrinkle her nose in distaste. "I came to remind you to charge your crystals," Harmony said. "Charge our crystals?" Bea asked. She and each of her sisters had inherited crystal jewelry from their godmother. They all believed that the crystals energized the powers that each of the Concordia sisters now seemed to possess after getting struck by lightning. Bea had visions when she touched certain items. Winnie seemed to draw things she had never seen, but that had significance to things that were going on in their lives. And Amanda could hear and talk to ghosts. Plus, they now all seemed to be able to talk to certain inanimate objects. "You have to put them out in moonlight," Harmony told them. "It's going to be a full moon." Bea nodded her understanding. "Is there anything else we need to do?" "I'll bring a Tibetan singing bowl for you," Harmony offered. Bea watched Winnie, standing behind her, roll her eyes. "It's an excellent tool," Harmony continued. "Did you know?" Suzanne, the woman in charge of shooting the television show Killer Cupcakes, Cookies, and Coffee at the nearby bakery, burst in, an unlit cigarette dangling from her mouth. "Tell me you have an apron." The three sisters looked at each other, semi-panicked. She had already bought out all their pots and pans, dishes, plates, housewares section, and all of Piper's cafe kitsch from Perk Up. Unimpressed, Harmony plucked the unlit cigarette out of the other woman's mouth and strolled out of the store without a word. Suzanne's jaw dropped open, but she didn't protest. She just watched her go. "This is a weird town," she muttered under her breath. Bea didn't disagree with her assessment. "I don't think we have any aprons," she said. "I think we do," Amanda said suddenly, staring off into the space above a rack of clothing. Bea assumed that she was watching the ghost, and the ghost had helpfully found an apron for them. Amanda hurried over and pulled out an apron covered with cartoon owls that looked stoned. She winced at its ugliness, even as she held it out for Suzanne's approval. "Fine," Suzanne snapped. "I'll take it. I don't care. I just want to finish this job. This show is going to be the death of me." She stalked up to Amanda and yanked it out of her grasp. "Put it on my tab." She walked back out. The Concordia sisters all looked at one another. "Does she even have a tab?" Winnie asked. Amanda shook her head. "Just let her have it," Bea said. "It's not like we're going to get anything for it anyway. She did us a favor by taking it off our hands." Her sisters nodded, knowing that she was the one who knew the value of everything in the shop. "I think we need to redesign this place," Winnie announced. Bea looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" "We could make it a lot more aesthetically pleasing," Winnie said, her inner artist coming to the forefront. "We could pay more attention to how we have the colors spread out and how we display some of our more attractive items." "Maybe Sandy can get us another model," Amanda suggested, referencing one of the pickers who often brought things into the shop to sell. "That would be fantastic," Winnie nodded enthusiastically. "I'm going to sketch out a layout." She ran upstairs. "It's nice to have her on board, finally," Bea said to Amanda. Her older sister nodded. Winnie had been the most resistant when they had first got here. It was nice to know that she was willing to do whatever it took to make a success of the shop. "We could pare down, too," Bea said, looking around. "Some of this stuff is just never going to sell." Amanda nodded. "You would know." Bea's gaze shot back to her sister, hearing the respect Amanda was offering her. It felt strange to get her older sister's approval, and Bea found herself standing up just a little bit straighter and smiling just a little bit more. As though the universe wanted to test Bea's resolve, the quirky picker, Peabody, strode in carrying a large cardboard box that they couldn't see the contents of. She was curious what he found for them. Sometimes he had some amazing finds, but in the past he had also brought them a singing lizard, a gently used hearth brush, and a box made of human teeth. When he last left the shop, he seemed pretty outraged that they did not buy into his theory that the Tooth Fairy had some nefarious plan to take over the world. Peabody grinned at them enthusiastically. "Ladies," he declared, "I have brought you treasure." "Do tell," Bea invited, indicating he should put the box down on the counter in front of the cash register. Instead, he put it on the floor with a heavy clunk. Bea fought back the urge to giggle as he opened the box and took out a large ceramic-lidded pot, which he placed on the counter. "A treasure," he declared. "What is it?" Amanda asked. "A goosunder," Peabody clapped excitedly. "Isn't it a beauty?" Amanda gave Bea a questioning look. She shrugged helplessly, having no idea what a goosunder was. Peabody shook his head with disappointed disbelief. "You've never even seen a goosunder? It's otherwise known as a thunderpot, a jerry, as in pot de chambre." He looked at them expectantly. "A chamber pot?" Bea asked slowly. "Yes. Isn't it a beauty?" "You mean for people to pee in?" Amanda asked. Bea bit back a smile, hearing the disgust in her voice. Peabody crossed his arms over his chest and tapped his foot impatiently. "Let me tell you, using a chamber pot is a much better option than trotting out to the outhouse in one's nightdress." "How would you know?" Amanda snapped. "Do you have a lot of experience with outhouses?" Peabody blinked his outrage and reached for the pot. Bea put her hand on the lid. "We'd be happy to sell it." "We will?" Amanda asked. "Yes." Bea shot her sister a warning look. Peabody was a good picker, and they couldn't afford to alienate him. They'd already offended him once about the tooth fairy. "This is an excellent find." She gave the man a grateful smile, for good measure. Peabody beamed his approval, gathered up his empty box, and strode out the door with a victorious cry of "Goosunder!" 4. Amanda nervously paced the length of the shop, waiting for the arrival of Detective Tom Keller. Rupert, leaning against the bookshelf, watched her with amusement. "What is it you're so worried about?" She shrugged. "That journal could contain the clues to figure out who Letty was helping. It could lead to whoever was responsible for her death." Rupert chuckled. "I really hope you never play poker." Amanda gave him a hard look. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You're more nervous than someone about to undergo a root canal," Rupert said with a knowing smile. "It has very little to do with the journal, and a lot to do with the man you'll be sharing it with." Amanda froze, then shook her head. Who knew that ghosts had such active imaginations? Rupert crossed his arms over his chest and scowled at her. "I'm dead, not blind," he told her. "I've seen the way you look at him. I've seen how flustered you get whenever he's around." Ignoring him, Amanda resumed her pacing. She wouldn't give the ghost the satisfaction of knowing he was right. But the idea of spending alone time with Tom Keller was putting her on edge. She told herself she had no right to feel the butterflies in her stomach. Keller was a man already spoken for by Piper, and Amanda wasn't the kind of woman who would ever get in the middle of someone else's relationship. Still, he was the first man she'd been truly attracted to in many years, and she couldn't help but be swept away a bit by the thrill of it all. A soft knock at the front of the shop jolted Amanda out of her musings. Tom Keller, for once not wearing one of his button-down gray shirts, but a red long-sleeved T-shirt, stood at the door, holding 2 pizza boxes. "Ah, red, the color of love," Rupert mocked. Trying to quell the butterflies that seemed to be fluttering double time suddenly, she hurried over and let him in. Once he was inside, she locked up behind them, not wanting to be interrupted by any unexpected visitors. "Sorry I'm late," Keller said. Amanda shook her head. "We didn't nail down a time." Keller looked around. "Where are your sisters?" "Bea is out on a date with Ash, the carpenter," Amanda replied, "and Winnie's out with Jim, the accountant." Keller frowned. "If you had let me know it was a date night, we could have rescheduled for another time." She quashed the wave of disappointment that rose up within her when she realized he wasn't thrilled about the idea of spending time alone with her. "I didn't even know they were going to be out this evening until a little while ago." She bit the inside of her lip, wondering guiltily if she should have called and rescheduled the meeting until her sisters could join them. "You can just put that down there," she said, pointing to the counter by the cash register. "I'll just run upstairs and get a chair." "I can do that," Keller offered, as she moved toward the steps leading toward the apartment. She shook her head, ready to tell him it wouldn't be necessary. "Really," he said, before she could get a word out. "I invited myself here. The least I can do is carry my own chair." Amanda nodded and motioned for him to follow her up the steps. When he reached the top, he paused for a moment, taking in the view of the apartment. "This is where you're staying?" Amanda shrugged. "For now, it's where Winnie and I are both staying." "Must get crowded," Tom remarked. Amanda picked up the chair behind Letty's desk and then handed it over to him. "We're making do." He turned to go back down the stairs, carrying the chair. "Wait," she said impulsively. He turned back to look at her, raising his eyebrows. "Richardson, the fire inspector?" she began stiltedly. "We're still building the case against him," Keller said. She shook her head. "Winnie said that when he was here, doing the inspection, she got the impression that he was looking for something. Has he mentioned that to you? And when he was getting ready to—" She trailed off, not wanting to say the man had been getting ready to kill her and her sisters. "He claimed his boss wanted something Letty had. Has he talked about that?" The detective shook his head slowly, then let his eyes wander around the room. "Any idea of what he was looking for?" "None," Amanda admitted. "I'll see if I can find out for you tomorrow," Keller offered. "Thank you, Detective." He shook his head. "Let's make a deal," he said. "I'll try to help you, but you've got to call me Tom." Amanda hesitated. Calling him by his first name seemed somehow intimate. She nodded her agreement while silently vowing to avoid calling him by any name. She picked up the leather-bound journal off Letty's desk and followed him back downstairs. They'd almost gotten to the bottom when she found herself saying, "So there's something I've got to ask you." He glanced over his shoulder at her and said, "Okay," then hesitated with the chair when he reached the store. "Over there," Amanda said, pointing to the dressing-room area and the velvet-covered chair. Tom moved quickly toward the area and put the chair down. He turned to face her, waiting for whatever her question was. She took a deep breath, swallowed hard, and asked, "Is Perkins one of your suspects?" Tom didn't respond. He just waited for her to continue. "Because my sisters and I were thinking, really, everybody who has a store here is thinking, that he's the one who has the most to gain from all of this." She trailed off weakly. Tom nodded and agreed. "It would appear that way." Frustrated by his non-committal answer, Amanda got busy getting the pizza. "If you want, we can save this for another time when my sisters are here." Tom frowned. "No, I don't think they need to be here for this." "Well, this is going to be a lot for the two of us," Amanda said. "Maybe you want to bring some to Piper when we're done?" Tom tilted his head to the side. "You don't think she's capable of getting her own dinner?" "I just mean," she stammered nervously. "I mean, you two just seem—" Not knowing how to continue, she waved her hand in the air. Amusement played in Tom's eyes as he watched her discomfort, but he offered her no escape. "You're close," Amanda finally blurted out. Tom nodded. "I'm really glad she's joining the family." Amanda swayed weakly. "You're engaged?" "That is not what he said, you nincompoop," Rupert interjected. 5. "Engaged to who?" Tom asked, as though the very idea startled him half to death. "Piper," Amanda said. "You just said—" She didn't get the rest of her sentence out, because Tom Keller, he who was overly fond of wearing gray shirts and somber expressions, threw back his head and laughed so loudly that the sound echoed off the walls. "You really need to listen better," Rupert drawled from his place over at the bookshelf. Amanda shot him a dirty look and made a mental note to ask Harmony if there was something they could use to keep ghosts away when she was trying to have important conversations with real living people. "You thought I—" Tom gasped through his gales of laughter. "Me and Piper?" He bent over. He was laughing so hard he could barely remain standing at all. "I don't see what's so funny," Amanda snapped, feeling like the world's biggest fool. Tom shook his head and attempted to regain a modicum of composure. "I'm sorry," he said. "It's just that was the last thing I expected you to say." "I don't see why," Amanda said crossly. She thrust the pizza boxes at him and crossed her arms over her chest. "You spend a lot of time there, and you're always in deep conversation with her." His eyes shone. On any other man, she...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?